This is WeatherBrains, episode number 681. This is the pre-show for the 4th of February, 2019, the magical part of this program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally say very, very outrageous things.
Well, I had 2 hours and a quarter of sleep last night, so I got lots of outrageous things to say.
Ooh.
Plenty of funny things also. I'm sitting here waiting on the call, James. I'm just sitting here, minding my own business, waiting for the little hangout to start. And my Google pops up and says, you have a call from Sweet Potato Pie Boutique. Now, are you going to answer something like that? Bill Murray? No. You're going to
would just
No, I had to. And it was a legitimate person calling to buy an ad on Alabama WX. But at some point, somebody had that Google Voice number as Sweet Potato Pie Boutique. And so when I answered it, I was like, hello. It's my typical potential telemarketer or Russian, bride phone call. And, so I was like, So at the end, we had a good laugh because after we talked, it was like, the reason I was so strange sounding when you called, it came up as Sweet Potato Pie Boutique. So if that's awesome. Not a show title.
About to say that is the show title, but we have to wait until the show starts before we can do show titles. But we always get the best ones in the pre-show here.
I'm putting one in right now, though, and that's because my microphone, my USB microphone, will not work through this port extender on my new Mac. So the one I'm voting for tonight is called Gotta Get a Dongle. That is my Gotta Get a Dongle.
Wow.
Hello, Kim.
I joined this conversation at the exact wrong time.
So did I. What is happening?
Wow.
Bill's got no sleep tonight. Bill had no sleep last night, so he is wired for sound.
No, I've never seen Bill this. He's ready. This could be good. He sounds like Kevin.
Wow.
This is good.
I'm following in your footsteps, Kevin.
So what you're saying is it takes a Bill and a Troy to add up to one of me.
Yep. And that is a show title.
That's our third show title in the first 5 minutes. That's not bad. Y'all missed my whole story about the Sweet Potato Pie Boutique that called right before James did.
Yeah, that was great. See, I would answer that.
I did. I had to answer it because I didn't know it was you. I thought you might have changed your number or something, and maybe Google Hangouts changed what the Hangout invites look like, and I don't want to miss the show because I thought it was some Russian bride's phone call or something.
Wow, this is going very weirdly.
Yeah.
So Bill, what's going on? Why are you sleepless? Where are you?
I'm actually in my weather office, but
okay.
I don't know. There's so much going on. I'm so stressed with all the work right now that I woke up at 1:45 and was like, bolt up right in bed. Like, after about 15 minutes, it's like you might as well go to work.
He was down at Hooters watching the Super Bowl last night and had a few too many cocktails. I think that's
not Hooters, Buffalo Wild Wings. I was pulling for overtime so we would get free wings.
Wow.
I've gotten 4 wows out of Kevin. This is kind of scary.
This definitely has a different vibe going here.
No. Bill is in a rare form. I don't think he's ever been in this kind of form before. So this could be a good show.
Probably not. Oh, I better invite guests, hadn't I? That might be a good thing.
Wow.
Wow. I am
really sad that I have to do the Fox show tonight.
Kim, how's that baby?
She's doing very, very much better these days. I've been trying to catch you all, but she went through this beautiful time known as the 4-month sleep regression, and along with it came a 4-month attitude transformation. So,
attitude adjustment, yes.
Attitude adjustment time. Yeah, she's kind of turned into a pterodactyl. I guess that's a thing that babies do.
That's a show title, by the way.
And maybe this is what's happening to Bill.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly the same thing. I empathize with her.
If you start screeching, I'll know. I'll know. That's the sign.
I'm not very far from it.
It might happen sooner than later at the rate this is going. Wow. I'm sorry, John.
There's a helium leak in
we're
Harrisburg.
not laughing at you. We're laughing with you.
John,
you've gone.
It's like that State Farm commercial in the Super Bowl last night where the helium truck leaks out in the tunnel.
Hey, John, give us a little mic check there.
You did that on purpose, man.
John, you might want to unplug and replug.
That's like Brian's building.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? Off and on again. Off and on again. Have you tried turning it off and on again? That normally does the trick.
Okay. Wow.
And I'm going to assume this is John Robinson, one of our guests. John, welcome.
I'm here.
Good.
John,
I'm just guessing because I'm flying ILS tonight because Scott talked to all the guests and I didn't have the privilege. So it's good to talk to you finally.
I'm happy to be here.
As I am.
John, we apologize in advance for whatever happens here.
We need another mic check out of Dr. Scala.
Yeah. Now, John, say something. Go.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hi from Little Rock.
Good.
All right, John, we got you. Now, John Scala, you say something.
I'm not sure I should. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, keep talking. Keep talking.
All right. I took down some of my windows. Maybe I've got too much on my computer going.
No, you're good. You're good now.
Quit playing Fortnite on your computer there, Doctor.
No, you're good. Something happened, and you sounded like what's
helium.
the best way to, like you sucked down some helium. Yeah, go back and watch the replay, and you'll see why we weren't laughing at you. We were laughing with you. So.
Oh, I realize that. You need entertainment in the evening. I understand.
I thought it was fun tonight, James. We took a walk back through the Internet Wayback Machine and looked at the how the blog looked in 2006, and even went back to what the ABC 3340 weather blog, before it became a WordPress site, looked like. And that was pretty cool.
That's 13 years ago.
It was so amazing to see when JB was posting regularly and, putting lots of good stuff on the blog.
In fact, I just thought about JB. I've got a monitor in front of me. Actually, it's a computer, but I typically have a program running that shows the local TV station I work for here. And we're an ABC affiliate, and they're running The Bachelor. And it's got all these, women grubbing on this guy. And JB would always come on, you won't believe what's on TV right now on your channel.
Yeah.
The Bachelor reminds me of JB. And also the Super Bowl halftime show reminds me of JB.
We would have had to have had a commentary on last night's Super Bowl show. Tonight.
That year, the Who played. That was the funniest rant I have ever heard from him.
And that's like one of the top 5 Super Bowl shows of all time. And JB hated it.
JB said he wanted this guy to play with him.
Yeah,
this is what JB wanted right here. Glenn Miller.
And do you remember what he called the current United States Speaker of the House?
No.
You don't remember that? He always referred to her as Nancy Polecat.
I like it.
Now we would be in really big trouble if he said that. Oh my goodness! Can't make this stuff up.
No. All right.
All right, we got to say hello to Michael. Michael Armstrong. Michael, can you hear us?
Hey, guys. How are you all? Can you all hear me?
Sounding good. Yeah, perfect.
Great.
And Queen Leslie.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Are you home, or which home are you in tonight?
So I'm in Tallahassee, spent the day in Marianna, Florida, with about 250 people. We had the summit for a resilient North Florida. And we were excited that as folks were leaving, they told us it was the best and most productive meeting they've gone to since the hurricane. So we brought in FEMA, the private sector, the faith-based groups, and everybody together, and just had a huge information download. And people walked out the door, one-stop shopping, problems solved, paperwork barriers cleared. It was a great day.
That's wonderful. Well, we're glad you're here for a special occasion tonight. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And hey, happy Weather Person's Day to all of y'all for tomorrow. It's the eve tonight, right?
Yeah. Weather Person's Eve, day Eve. That's right.
Well, after James has experienced all the trolls, I'm sure that's much welcome, right, James?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I got some notices you're supposed to wear your AMS pin. I don't even know if I got a pin when I got that. This has been so long. I'm going to go try and find
AMS T-shirt count.
I don't even have one of those. But I'll see if I can find something here. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's something. All right, we've got to wait. In fact, here we go. 5 seconds out, and we get this thing started. We have to hit the TV, and here we go. Hello, friends watching on television. This is WeatherBrains, the pre-show that's about to morph into the real show here. I think we have everybody online. So it's Monday night. Weather's nice and calm this week as opposed to last week at this time where there was panic in the streets here. So let me get the recorders going, and we can get this show started. And there's number 1 and number 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is WeatherBrains episode number 681, the weekly show that's all about weather. This is for the 4th of February, 2019. And we're glad you're here. We got a full house looking at the guests we have here. And I see Kevin. Kevin, you doing the Fox show at 9 o'clock tonight?
I am doing the Fox show tonight, but I also have breaking news.
Stand by.
Soundboard.
Yeah, about to say, I was not prepared for that one. Here we go.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
All right, so we have a wonderful announcement for James. I'm going to apologize to the audio listeners and do a screen share because James has won a fantastic award. James, you were named #1 weatherman, in the whole country?
You're stealing all of Leslie's thunder.
Oh, well, keep going. What was the award?
We can edit this part out.
What was the award, James?
No, we don't make edits on this show.
Just like TV. Yeah.
Yes. So
hey Leslie, thanks for joining us. I know you drove 500 miles to get home in time for the show tonight, so thanks for being here.
Oh, it is such a pleasure. Listen, as you guys know, our group, the nonprofit Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, created the National Weather Person of the Year Award in 2014 to coincide with National Weather Person's Day, which is tomorrow. So happy Weather Person's Day to all of you and all of the WeatherBrains out there. And what we're doing is we're recognizing individuals, meteorologists, weather persons, and others who give voice to our cause of protecting lives and property. And the process is really straightforward. We open it up to the free world for balloting in the first round. We then, from that, take a look and we develop a slate of 5 finalists. And then we reopen it for balloting again. And then we look at the inputs from people for the winners. So our past winners, our first winner in 2014 was Jim Cantori of the Weather Channel, followed by Max Mayfield of the National Hurricane Center. Third year was Alex Garcia, another great local broadcaster and community educator like you, James, in San Antonio, Texas. And last year it was Ada Monzon of Puerto Rico for her unbelievable work during Irma and Maria. And this year, by the strongest balloting, more than 17,000 votes cast for you, sir, you are our winner and our honoree. So everyone was kind enough to let me come tonight and say a few words. And I figured what I would do is just read 3 of the nominations because I think they tell the whole story. In addition to the balloting, which is off the charts. I'm sure it was your piece on mean tweets. Just kidding. Not really. The vote was over by then. It was over by then. So let me just read 3 quick things, if I might.
I'm surprised you still gave it to him after that.
No. The people have spoken by an enormous margin. So first, anonymous, when I pulled 3 of these out, there were so many like this, said, there's no one more dedicated to local news and saving lives. James goes out into the community every day and talks to people, the kids, and teaches them how to react during severe weather. He has dedicated his life to meteorology, and there's no one more deserving. So that was one, and very typical of all the inputs. The next one I wanted to share was, I was partly inspired to pursue an academic career in meteorology because of James, and he remains the single best weather person I've ever seen, and I've ever watched him, and I have watched him since 1979. He has an unparalleled knowledge of weather and his viewing area, and an unquestioned love for his community. If he wanted to do so, James could be elected governor of Alabama in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Go for it, James.
The only one that would beat him is Nick Saban.
Yeah, well, there you go. He is the best known person in the northern half of the state and the most respected. And this one was not anonymous. It was provided by Dr. John A. Knox from the University of Georgia Atmospheric Sciences program. So that one, another one, but I want to read to you the last quote and it from a nomination of someone, another major fan of yours, fairly popular in her own right, and that's an understatement. This is what she said about you, sir. James Spann is a weather king, a meteorological genius, dedicated family man, and all while putting the safety of his viewers front and center. James is the man for more than just saving lives in big events. He spreads joy and weather awareness everywhere he goes. He inspired me to be who I am today and is still my #1 mentor. And this nomination came in from Ginger Z, chief meteorologist from ABC News.
Wow. And you didn't read my nomination, though, Leslie. My nomination said, I've nominated him twice, and he's old, so please give it to him while he can still get it.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it.
That one went by the wayside. But the funnest part, look at that. Kevin, flash that picture up again.
Yeah.
I got it up there. Yeah, you'll have to blue box
see,
me.
James has on his tennis shoes because this is a great story.
Well, see, that's what I wanted to ask is because, and you might not be able to see it, but there's a very dapper fellow presenting James with the award, and he's in a nice suit and then when you look a little closer, you get to a point where you see James. If I can, wait a minute, let me get to this. And we get a little. I wanted to know what exactly was going on here. And the question that came to my mind was, James, I thought you were around 60, and this is clearly the outfit of an 87-year-old man.
Wow.
Wow.
So my job was to surprise James. And so Jeff Houston, at the news director at ABC 3340, was great. He got a few people in on it, but not very many. And so I had to show up, you know, to introduce Dominic Sims, who's the board member of Flash that's there, and the dapper fellow. And so Brenda LeDunn and Pam Huff, the anchors, you know, have to get James to the studio or to the lobby. And he's only concerned because I have given him this red herring that this 7-year-old girl is going to come and watch the show with her parents. That's all he cares about is that. And so Brenda and Pam grab him and say, there's an urgent situation in the lobby. So he thinks there's a gunman running around in the studio. And when he came running down the bridge and he looked and he saw all those people standing in there like a surprise party, he knew he'd been had. So it was quite nice to see James being surprised. But James,
I have never heard those two ladies like that before. I honestly thought we had a gunman in here because they said there's an urgent situation in the lobby and we need you right now. And I don't even have time to get.
He not only can forecast the weather, he can take down a gunman.
That's right.
Yeah. I got some Butler County in me, and I can jump some guy. But I got down there and saw those people, and I was just blown away. I was totally blown away. And You know,
You
old
really
men
were.
cry very easily. I'm going through male menopause. Y'all about to make me start crying here. But no, that was a big honor, and I am overwhelmed. I was not expecting that. And Bill, you did a tremendous job of keeping that hush hush. I had no earthly idea what that was about. So thanks to everybody that voted and those kind words, Dr. Knox and Ginger and everybody else. I'm not worthy of those words, but thank you. I'm very honored and very flattered, and
We disagree.
I'm speechless. So thank you.
Much
Well,
deserved. You guys all have fun tomorrow. I always hear a rumor you get free ice cream on Weather Person's Day, so enjoy.
I will say the Bluebell truck always pulls up every year.
That's what
And
I
somehow,
hear.
Yeah.
Bluebell ice cream from Brenham, Texas, Troy.
Yes, sir.
Here.
Yep.
They actually took our order, so it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a great tour, by the way. If you're ever by near Brenham, swing through
Right.
there, and it's a really nice factory tour. And what's really nice at the end, you go in, you know, and like some places you'll go and they'll give you like a little taste or a Hershey's Kiss or something. These guys give you full bowl of ice cream when you're done.
Good.
Yeah, and we actually have a Bluebell plant just 40 miles down the road from where we are here, and that's where they come from. So it's I've heard the tour is just awesome. Well, goodness, I'm like flabbergasted here, Bill. I don't know what else to say. So let's quickly, Leslie, do you need to leave, or you going to stay for a little bit? What's your status?
I'm going to let you guys go. The last thing I wanted to say, James, is that the award itself comes with a trip to our national conference in beautiful Clearwater Beach in November. And then we would like to offer you the opportunity, of course, to come and speak to our attendees who are count among your fans. So we'll look forward to seeing you, if not sooner, here in November down at a beautiful beach. And congrats again, and thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and I'm very honored, and you were so kind to spend some time with us tonight. Leslie, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for everything you do, Leslie. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. All right, thanks. All right, so Kim, I don't know what to say. I'm floored. So, Kim, how are you? Tell us about the baby. Everybody's asking about the baby. So tell us about the baby.
distract. Well, you know me. I will tell you all about the baby. So, yeah, she's doing well. She's 5 months tomorrow. She's growing up. She's just as strong-willed as ever. We actually had a babysitter that wasn't a family member for the first time on Saturday night. It was terrifying, but it was fun. She was already being a special, willful child by the time we left the house. And I think when we came home, this is a very experienced babysitter. The girl had grown up with a large family and so on. She's a meteorology grad student who watched our children, or watch our baby, single child. And she said that she was the most strong-willed one that she'd ever encountered. So
Came by it naturally, Kim.
she had 15 minutes solid of stories about how the night had gone for her. So I think it's a badge of honor. I wear it proudly. My daughter is enormously strong-willed, and already at 5 months is making an impact on the planet. So we're just excited to see how this goes.
This is very exciting for me to hear, because now, as I said in the pre-show, we have Troy and Bill and Kim's daughter. I feel comfortable retiring as the accelerant.
You're our number one mentor, Kevin.
Troy, what's on your mind down in Austin, Tejas?
Well, down here, I guess, looking at all of you scattered about, even Kevin, really. I mean, I didn't look at the Wichita Falls, but in Austin today, 77 degrees, both at Camp Mabry and out at Bergstrom, 3 degrees short of 80 today. So.
And for those that are listening, Troy's in a tank top and flip flops this evening.
God, no, please.
In that muscle shirt. So Bill, let's bring in our guests. Let's move on here. We got some good stuff coming up.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're even still here, but I can see both of them have made it through, so that's great. But tonight's show is the brainchild of listener Dustin Varga, who asked us why we hadn't done a retrospective on the 1999 January tornado outbreak in Arkansas. And so Scott Martin did a fantastic job pulling together tonight's guest. John Robinson is retired National Weather Service WCM from Little Rock. John, welcome to the show tonight.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we are even more excited to have you here than that. We got a lot to talk about tonight, so hang tight for just a moment there, and we'll be right back to you. Michael Armstrong joins us tonight. He's field meteorologist and executive weather producer for COCO in Oklahoma City, and so he joins us tonight from there. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much. I've seen so many episodes, and I'm a huge fan.
So
it's really an honor to be on, especially tonight when I guess we're celebrating James' 87th birthday. Is that what?
Yeah, that's it.
Correct. You got that right. 87, the big 87. Yeah.
I told them they had to hurry up and get that award in here because it wasn't.
It was going to drop dead.
He's in great shape for 87, though. That's for sure. So anyway, Michael, first tell us, what you do day in and day out. What's your role, and how long have you been doing that?
Okay, well, I just finished up my first contract, 3-year contract at KSCO, and re-signed actually right here at the first of the year. And so they came to me, let's see, it was August of 2015. With a role. I was an on-air meteorologist at the CBS affiliate here in Oklahoma City from 1999, which is actually really interesting that we're bringing up this event. So that'll be part of my story tonight. But continued through 2013. Actually went into ministry, served on our local church here, Henderson Hills in Edmond, Oklahoma, on the north side of Oklahoma City. For a couple of years, and then KSCO called, and I started really considering it. It was a really unique opportunity. It's a role that's I lead our storm team, so I'm the field meteorologist. So I have the meteorology education, I have that background, but I also can do the on-air side. So I'm kind of that fifth person that anytime anybody's gone for any reason, I'm there to fill in. So as anybody who knows has worked on air, it's so constant. The number of shows and everything is just so constant. So it's nice to have someone who can fill in at a moment's notice. So that's the other part of it. And then I do a lot of work just behind the scenes of liaison work between the morning show and the evening show, and really try to be a glue for our team. And again, lead our storm team and lead the coverage from the field, which is an exciting thing in Oklahoma, to say the least. So I in many ways, I have my dream job, and I'm very, very blessed.
Michael, I got a question. This is Troy Kimmel down in Austin. How long have you been and you probably just said this and it skipped by me. How long have you been at COCO? How long you been doing that job?
Yeah, 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're not burned out. You like that. So I'm speaking for James. James is 87. I don't know if you knew that. There's a lot of people that Michael and I admire your youth and everything that are starting to kind of drop out. But you're saying you're still like it. And that's what a great weather market that is.
It is. I love it. I love Oklahomans. I guess in the same way as I've watched James, and everything, and just his love for Alabama and protecting the people as best he can, sharing great information with them. That's my goal for Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma, and so to be able to do that in my home state is really just an amazing thing. So I have a great passion for it, and being able to put on different hats pretty much almost every day. Some people ask me, what's your schedule? And I'm like, what schedule? I mean, it's just, there is nothing normal about it, but I'm all in. It's a blast.
Well, you have to be in a way. This next guy I want to introduce, if you'll let me do it, Bill, is John Robinson, who is retired National Weather Service from Little Rock. And I don't think John and I have ever talked. I'm down here in Central Texas, but I'm such an admirer of his work. He was warning coordination meteorologist up at the National Weather Service in Little Rock. John, how long were you up there, and how long were you WCM at Little Rock?
Well, actually, I started my career with the Weather Service in Little Rock just out of college in 1974. So, yes, I'm old, too. And I worked up to forecaster at Little Rock when they started the Center Weather Service units in 1978, where they put Weather Service forecasters in the air traffic control centers. I went to Miami to help start that program. 11 months later, I was offered a lead forecaster job to go back to Little Rock, so I did. And the last 15 years of my career, I was morning coordination meteorologist. So I retired right at the beginning of 2015, and it looks like I was a jinx on the state of Arkansas because since my retirement, we have not had a big severe weather outbreak. So maybe they were happy to see me retire.
Well, where you sit geographically, though, John, and the work that you did while you were there, we could talk about the storms of I imagine you've got a lot of those stories, because having spent part of my life in North Mississippi over in the Memphis CWA in that area to the east, that is not an area that's not, at least until the time that John stepped down, is a very busy weather area, and Arkansas is included in that.
Yeah, that's true. And gosh, I think the first 10 years I was WCM, I think we were short of people in the springtime 8 out of those 10 years.
Wow.
So very often it was the meteorologist in charge and I that went out to do the storm surveys, because it was a little easier for us to just ditch our schedules and go out. Obviously, you can't tell the forecasters, hey, we're just not going to have a forecast today. Why don't you go out and look at some damage? That just doesn't work. So we ended up doing it a lot, and I did learn a lot over the years. And since I retired, I have been working with the Wind Scale Estimation Committee, which is working to update the Enhanced Computed Scale. We've been working on that project now for, gosh, I think since 2012, maybe. And our next meeting is coming up here next month, as a matter of fact, in Norman. So I still get to do that. And I occasionally appear on KATV, the ABC affiliate here in Little Rock. They want me on kind of as a color analyst during severe weather outbreaks. And this last year, that was only once. But I'm always ready. And if we do have some damage, I do go out and take some pictures that I share with the Weather Service and KATV. So I still keep my finger in that as well.
Well, I've got to mention one thing just to get a plug in. I imagine you maybe stay in touch with that guy, my Aggie friend, Newton Skiles, that was up in Little Rock.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I talked to him here just a few days ago. He graduated just 1 year before me from Texas A&M. So, of course, I knew him in college, and it was nice to get to Little Rock and at least have somebody that I knew first starting out with my career.
So what got you into weather, John? What did it for you in the early 70s?
There was not one big event. My parents, I grew up in Houston, Texas, not Houston, Arkansas, Houston, Texas. And my parents and my aunts and uncles have told me that before I ever went to kindergarten, I had learned to read the weather forecast off the front page of the Houston newspaper. So I guess it was just kind of preordained from there. And if I had flunked out of calculus in college, I don't know what the heck I'd have done for a career.
That's funny. That is too funny. So set the stage for us. January 1999, you had the largest January outbreak in history, but that wasn't the only outbreak in that month in Arkansas, was it?
Well, that was a busy month all the way around. At the very beginning of January of 99, we had an ice storm across northern Arkansas, and that came into our difficulties later in the month. On the 17th of January, we had a number of tornadoes. It was not a big outbreak, but we did have some tornadoes across the northern and northeastern parts of our county warning area in Arkansas. And so then the big event came along on the 21st. So then when we had to go out and look at damage, the first thing we had to do was separate the ice storm damage from the tornado damage. And, it's not like when you go out in the springtime and after something occurs, the trees kind of weather, the broken limbs turn kind of brownish before very long. Boy, in January, that doesn't happen. And so both on the 17th and the 21st, when we got into some of those areas that had the ice storm, first thing we had to do is try to separate out the ice storm damage from the tornado damage, and then separate the tornado damage from the 17th from that of the 21st. So it was kind of a difficult task all the way around. And the sheer number of tornadoes, we had 56 in that outbreak, 52 of which occurred in only 8 hours. So our work was really cut out for us for quite a number of days after that of going out and looking at damage. Basically, we'd meet first thing in the office in the morning, and we'd look at some maps, and the other team would say, hey, we'll go here. And my team would say, okay, we'll go here. And only once in all those surveys did we ever cross paths. So I guess we mapped it out pretty well that we didn't end up duplicating our efforts.
So set the weather stage for that outbreak on the 21st. Meteorologically for us.
Well, that was one of those that you saw coming way in advance. I think we got up into, I think the mid 70s that day. A strong cold front coming with a lot of upper support, and certainly we knew we were going to have trouble. We had planned our staffing at the weather office well in advance for that, and so we were prepared for a big outbreak. Certainly nothing of the magnitude that occurred, but nevertheless we were ready for it. Now, one of the difficulties back there, obviously we had the Doppler radar at that time, but we were on the first iteration of workstations for Doppler in the weather office, which was a stalk with monitors on it. Forecaster, the one forecaster sat in front of it with a big graphics tablet, perhaps 20 by 20 inches, with a 4-button mouse, and clicked on that graphics tablet to display the radar pictures on one of those 2 monitors. So what does that tell you? Basically, only one person can efficiently look at radar at one time. Yeah, other people can look over his shoulder and say, "Hey, look at that thing popping up there. Don't disregard that one." And somebody else can look over his shoulder and say, "Hey, I got to write a severe weather statement for that last warning you put out. Let me gawk at that storm there for a minute." But basically, it came down to one person having to make a lot of those warning decisions itself. Now, of course, we have, I think, 6 workstations in the office. Anybody at any of those workstations can call up any radar views they want. We can sectorize the state so that maybe one person does the western part, another does the eastern part, another person does the follow-up statement, another person takes down the reports and sends those out. So it's a lot easier to handle severe weather outbreaks now than it was back there in 1999.
Or how about 1979 when you had a RATS terminal and a blue AFOS machine, huh, John?
Well, yeah, that's true. As part of my early career as an intern, I was certified to operate the WSR 57, which was the old black and white radar.
Yep.
When we moved the weather office in 1975, they literally picked up the radar and moved it across town. It was out of service for about a month during that particular time. Newton Skiles, who we talked about earlier, and one of the radar operators and I were on the hook any time that we were on ship and there was going to be weather on the radar. We went to Little Rock Air Force Base and operated their radar, which I think was a CPS-9 at that time. It was a orange screen with purple echoes, quite beautiful. So I learned to operate that one. Along the way, I learned to operate the 74C and then, of course, the 88D. So, yeah, I got the whole progression of radars in my career.
So what was the significance of the 74C versus the 57 network radar, and the significance of the radar that you went to at the Air Force Base?
Well,
why would you do that?
The 74C was more of a local warning radar. It was a 5-centimeter radar versus 10-centimeter for the network radars, like 57. And I had a few opportunities to operate that when there was a weather office over in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The Air Force radar, well, now that was a lot different. That was a case where you turned a dial and it hid the echoes on the screen for you, and they remained stagnant on that screen. When you wanted an update, you had to erase the screen, turn the dial again, and it would paint you a new picture. You promptly learned that if you erased very often, the thing overheated and you didn't get new pictures at all. So you had to
Like
be
an
very
etch a sketch, huh?
circumspect in how often you updated your to look at. And I did indeed have one severe weather outbreak while I was at the Air Force Base, which at that time was the backup radar for Little Rock. And I had to continuously call over to the weather office and say, hey, put out a radar for this, put out a warning for this county, put out a warning for that county.
Wow.
It was very, very hectic. Now, the radar operators at the Air Force Base were good, yes. But their mission, of course, being in the Air Force, was not to do public warnings.
Right.
And so while they were our backup radar and they could easily back us up if we were down, they certainly did not want to be in the position to have to do warnings. And that's why our meteorologist in charge at that time worked it out so that we would go operate their radar for their purposes and ours both. And at that time, we still had the Titan missile silos with the nuclear warheads in Arkansas. And so I had to keep track of those as well, because we part of our warning mission at the Air Force Base was to alert them if there was going to be lightning within 5 miles of a missile silo. So that was a whole new task for me. Especially a kid, let's see, about a year and a half out of college, and I'm dealing with nuclear warheads. So that was real interesting.
Yeah, that's a little scary right there for sure. So, what procedures would they take at the silo if there was lightning? Was there some way they would disarm them or something?
I honestly don't know what they did over there. It was just a matter of letting them know. And they did whatever it did, but I never had a chance to visit the silos. And I would say that if you lived in Arkansas, it was no secret as to where those silos were. If you knew what the little brown road signs were as you drove down the highway that said something about, 74-2 or something and pointed off in the distance, you probably learned that that's where one of the missiles was underground.
And there was a terrible accident there, wasn't there, John, at some point in the 60s?
That's right. There was a accident with one of those missiles where somebody dropped a fancy wrench, I believe, and punctured the fuel tank, and it blew up. And that was early, very early in my career, so I didn't have anything to do with that part of that. So mostly what I know about that was that what I had read about it after the fact.
Yeah, there was a really incredible Nova or some PBS show that was amazing about it. So things we don't even want to know about. So that's true. Dr. John, you were storm analyst at the Weather Channel during this event. You got any great things that you remember about it to share?
What I remember, Bill, was that was my first opportunity. Actually, that's when my career started at the Weather Channel. They'd given me a chance to talk about the November 9/10, 1998 storm that hit the Great Lakes, which was 23 years after the Edmund Fitzgerald storm. So I guess I did okay, and they gave me an opportunity to go on the air that week, that third week of January, which turned out to be not only a record outbreak for Arkansas, but it was for the nation. And I think it still stands as the outbreak, the January outbreak.
So was there karaoke involved in the Edmund Fitzgerald thing? Did that help you get the job, or was it all real meteorology?
No, but I knew all about the storm. So they said, okay, why don't you go on the air and talk about the next one? Okay, I can do that. I can do that.
So Michael, you were chasing, right? During this, was this one of your early chases?
It was, yeah. So I was a student still at the University of Oklahoma, actually, at that time, and I am not saying that to offend anyone in any way. So don't.
No, I mean, James has got the fight song all queued up over there. So.
Oh, very nice. All right. So, well, I was
actually do.
There it is. All right.
But wait till it gets to the good part here. Hang on. Here it goes. Now. Okay, enough of that.
He can even hit the post on the fight songs. That's really impressive.
That's right. So my chase partner, Dan Scoff, who is chief meteorologist at KNWA and Fox 24 in Fayetteville, Arkansas now, of kind of interesting irony there, I guess, a little bit, that he ended up in Arkansas and actually worked in Little Rock for a little while too, along with Amarillo. But Dan and I chased together for while we were in undergrad together. And, it was through that time when I first went into undergrad, I thought, I probably would do some sort of research, maybe try to go through National Severe Storms Lab or Storm Prediction Center, something like that. I just really wanted to dedicate my life to helping people prepare for severe weather, but I really hadn't seen broadcast as really the direction I was going to go. Well, we saw the high risk, and we were watching it 5 days out. Our eyes were, as OU students, I mean, like we knew every time any outlook comes out, oh, here we go, this is the big one, and so you start chomping at the bit as a meteorology student to get out there and experience it. And what a lab we have in the United States, in the eastern half of the country, to go out and observe these things. It's really amazing. So we take off from Oklahoma City and we go and we chase in Little Rock. And so we're armed with a weather radio, a 35 millimeter camera, and what else did we have? We didn't have very much. I'll put it that way. I think we did have a laptop, but we had no internet connection, so there was none of that. So it was truly pretty much old school chasing. You get your eyes on the storm and see what you can see, which of course is not that easy in Arkansas. I mean, I always think about that when I hear people that kind of rip the Southeast or rip other parts of the country for the numbers of fatalities they have with tornadoes. And I'm like, you just don't understand. Like it's hard to see things coming, especially if they're in night, they're embedded in lines, all sorts of other issues that we really don't. I mean, we can deal with that in the planes, but we tend to deal with supercells more. So kind of the preferred chasing, but we ended up on I-40 and we pulled into Little Rock around 4:30, and we just ended up really in the right position. We watched training supercells one after another. It's just a parade of supercells that came there through the west side of Little Rock and then on up to the north. And of course, BB was hit. So a lot of the tornadoes actually hit mainly after dark. Am I right on that, John?
There were quite a number of them after dark, especially in the areas to the northeast of Little Rock.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen here. I've got just a couple of pictures that I'm going to show you guys that I took that day, and let me know if I don't do this right. But here we go. You guys see that one?
No, we still see you.
Still see me. Okay. Let's try this.
Google's probably already deprecated the screen sharing feature because they're just slowly getting rid of this platform.
Okay, can you see it now?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
That's impressive.
So that's from library. Actually, they did a big newspaper article on us on our chase, and a lot of the times it's interesting that John mentioned how he was starting at the Weather Channel where this is we pulled over and would have motels check in and let us watch their TV so we could see what the Weather Channel was saying. That was our nowcasting. So go ahead.
We were watching you, Dr. John.
Was at Terry Library, by the way, on Napa Valley Road, just off of Rodney Parham Road. So there's some details about that one. And then this is the other one. This was again, you see the issue right there. You can't see even the base. You can't see beneath the wall cloud, which James, I'm sure you're familiar with in Alabama. I mean, it's a storm chasing nightmare in many ways. But what struck me about that photo is just the grass still being dormant. The Bermuda is still dormant and brown. So as John was talking about the vegetation in the trees, that kind of reminded me of that as well. So just a very interesting, very interesting all the way around. So I was very fortunate to be able to go and chase that particular storm. It was one that I was glad I was able to, but at the same time, it was nerve-wracking because I just didn't feel good about being in that terrain. And the other thing about it is that we didn't have any really local contacts there. So it was truly just one of those where you go and you observe it. And I wasn't really helpful like I am now in Oklahoma. So being able to make that transition from just going out and doing it for a hobby and actually doing it to help people is really a huge part for me personally. And so I took that video that we shot some video also and had the tornado sirens were blaring. So we went back to Oklahoma City and I took that video to Gary England the next day at KWTV, and he offered us a job pretty much right there on the spot. Said, "You want to do storm trackers?" And let me tell you, that was music to my ears as a broke college student.
Well, Michael, I've got a question for you. I mean, we're in 2019, and you work with these people, you produce there in Oklahoma City. This was 1999. We're long before the days of GR level programs. I mean, that would even scare me more now. I think that I went through that experience, not with what you can have today, Michael, but the relatively little bit. I mean, the most technologically thing you've told me about is weather radio.
Yeah.
Weather radio.
That was it. Yeah, it's totally different. It's totally different now. And we do have great tools. I still maintain, though, in some ways, there were fewer people on the roads. Yeah. It was easier to navigate in many ways. And you really just learned to trust your eyes. You learned what storms look like. You learned what was more serious than others. Now, there are so many people who can get out there and pull up Radar Scope or whatever their favorite app is, and they see a red box and they can go for it. And you see a lot of people out there who really, I don't know, it's hard out there in the fields a lot of times just because. And I'm all about where we live. I love living in America. I love we're a free country. We have driver's licenses. We can go from state to state, no papers, as I think about that for Red October, and things like that. So I love that part of it, but it does make it hard whenever we're trying to let people know what's coming at them. And we're kind of the front line. We really are the ground truth out there. It's a really important component, and it can get pretty tough when you got 500 or, I don't know, 1,000 chasers on a little 2-lane dirt road, all fighting for a spot to try to see the storm. It's crazy out there.
Well, that, Michael, I mean, not counting this last season, but Oklahoma's in the middle of that. I mean, law enforcement is getting fed up with this, and I don't have to tell you something that you already know. I mean, there's some serious stuff going. We've had chasers that have been killed in traffic accidents in the last couple of years. Getting to be an issue in Oklahoma. I know you're right in the middle of it up there.
Yeah, we really prioritize safety, but I mean, it's getting in a car and driving is probably the most dangerous thing anybody does on a daily basis. And then you put yourself out in that position. You want to talk about distracted drivers. I mean, throw up about 3 different radar screens, plus staring out the window at the clouds, and then 4-way stops. And as I talk about it, I get a little bit nervous just for my wife and my kids. I have 4 children, and I want to come home and hug them and kiss them and go on with the rest of my life. So we definitely prioritize safety when we're out there. And I know sometimes media can get a bad rap out there, storm chasing and that time. And sometimes you feel like a target where everybody's trying to catch you doing something bad or whatever, so they can expose you on social media. I think James calls them trolls or something. I don't know, but
he's got a can of troll spray you can borrow.
Yeah, I do.
I did see that.
And it works very well.
On Twitter the other day. That was great.
John,
So,
I've got a question.
It was interesting for me.
Yeah, John, what was the fatality count and the injury count on those tornadoes in 1999?
Well, we had 8 fatalities altogether. And considering we had 56 tornadoes, yeah, we wish we could sit here and say we had 0 fatalities.
Yeah.
But 8 was, I think, we consider that to be an amazingly low number. And there were about 150 injuries altogether.
Wow.
One of the things that struck me about the fatality count, a lot of people may remember in 1997 when we had the outbreak with the Arkadelphia tornado, and that one killed 25 people. And I remember in that particular episode in the weather office, my gosh, the fatality count just went up hour by hour by hour. And literally we were sitting there thinking, my gosh, when is this ever going to end? Now in the 99 outbreak, we knew about 7 of the 8 fatalities almost right off the bat. We knew a lot of them before the news media knew about them. And we thought, well, gosh, what's it going to be when dawn comes tomorrow? What's this count going to end up being? and it only went up by one more, and that was a person that lived way out in a rural area all by himself, and he really wasn't even known to be missing until the next day. So in this particular case, almost all the fatalities were known about just almost immediately right off the bat when they occurred. And so, boy, that was a lot different in that respect. And you talked earlier about the technology and so forth. My gosh, when we did storm surveys, back in that era, we didn't have GPS, and we still had a bunch of paper maps in the car.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I remember
how were we measuring things? Well, gee, the car had a trip odometer on it. Yeah, well, when the road curves around, that's not real accurate, but that's the best we could do.
Yeah. Hey, John, let me show you. I want to share for everyone else here my screen share from the SBC Tornado Outbreak Interface, which is an incredible product that they put together.
It's a great resource.
It's a great resource. So I'm showing this right now for those that are just listening and not watching. It doesn't matter what time of the year the atmosphere puts its ingredients together. When they're there, the outcome is going to be the same. You're going to get tornadoes, right? So what they list here on their page, they colorize a number of levels and a number of parameters. And what just stands out is you could look at this outbreak and it would be almost identical to, say, May, with the ingredients that were in place. You have a 110 knot mid-level jet rounding the base of the trough with the left exit region heading towards eastern Texas. There's a 55 knot 850 millibar strong low-level wind that's nosing into central Arkansas, and it's coexistent with 1,500 to 2,000 joule surface-based cape. So all of this lined up right across central and eastern Arkansas, and there it is. When those things come together, the outbreak is going to take place.
Yeah, talk about what you were thinking when you saw these parameters coming together, John.
Let me take the screen share down, Bill. So they pulled me aside and said, we need somebody to do the severe weather on the air at the Weather Channel. You want to do this? And I said, well, absolutely. I've been watching this all day. So they put me in front of a camera, but at that time, truth be told, I didn't have my own earpiece. So they just grabbed one and they gave it to me, and it didn't fit my ear very well. So we're starting to do the providing some of the color commentary, as John was saying, and the earpiece popped out of my ear, just went flying right out of my ear. So I had no idea what they were saying to me. So I just went ahead.
They couldn't stop you. You could just keep going.
I just kept going. That's right. And we had a live crew that went to somewhere in Arkansas. I don't remember exactly where it was. And we were going to go live to them for a cut-in while I was providing the commentary on the synoptic setup. And the engineer hit the wrong button. So rather than pulling up the live crew in the field, he pulled up the Pope getting off a plane in Mexico to a mariachi band.
Wow.
And my first thought was, this outbreak is so bad, the Pope is burned.
I love it that you invented the AirPod there. It flew right out of your ear, John. That was great.
It just shot. I mean, if that video still exists, you'll see the thing fly right out of my ear.
Hit Nick Walker right in the eye. It was
Anybody who's ever been on TV can totally appreciate that. By the way,
I know. Live television, right?
Yep.
One of the things I wanted to mention about the fatalities, when you're working in the weather office and you get those reports, it is absolutely amazing how quiet it gets. No matter how much people have knocked themselves out, there's always the kind of the thing in the back of your mind, well, we weren't totally successful here, no matter how well you had done. And I'm sure, James, in your TV coverage, you have that same feeling. Let me tell you a little story here. Several years back, one of the Arkansas counties, one of the county judges wanted to get rid of the sirens in the county, and he wanted to replace them with weather radios. So he came up with a plan where anybody in the county who wanted a weather radio could have one at county expense. Now, the county technically owned it. Give it back if you moved out of the county. They were going by fire districts, handing out the radios because they couldn't get that, tens of thousands of them at one time. And in some of the first fire districts, even though some of these places had been hit by tornadoes previously, only about half the people would take a free radio.
Wow.
Well, at that time, I knew what I would call the bureau chief, the head of the Associated Press in Arkansas. And I had mentioned this to him, and he said, one of these days we're going to do a story about that. And so they did. They went out and talked to some people. And some of them, in fact, had been affected by the 97 or the 99 tornadoes. And one guy said, yeah, my mobile home got blown away. And if it hadn't been for that weather radio, it would have got my bleep. And so he said, I'm happy to take another one. They went to another person. And this person said, yep, I lived in a mobile home and that tornado got it, blew it away. And he said, but the home that I have now, which was another mobile home, by the way, is the home that God always wanted me to have, and he wouldn't take it away from me, and I am not going to worry about it.
Oh, man. Wow.
Now, then they went to a lady who was the assistant manager of a small discount store. And she said, the minute that I hear the first thing about tornadoes, I go straight to bed. I don't want to know anything whatsoever about it.
Wow.
So Kim, you taking good notes over there? I'm sure you've never heard any of these stories, Kim.
Anybody that's in preparedness, whether it's in the weather office, the social scientists, the folks on TV, you're doing the best you can to try to save lives. But unfortunately, when you hear things like this, you realize that no matter what you do, there are some people that are not going to take the slightest bit of precautions to protect themselves. And boy, is that disappointing.
Yep.
Yeah, Kim's head is spinning around in circles there just a second ago, John, while you were talking.
No, I mean,
but Kim, this is not a surprise, right?
Yeah, no, this is you hear that there. I'm trying to remember what the exact phrase is that comes from risk communication. You can't design a system. It's very, very difficult to design a system for any threat that is going to motivate everyone, especially when you're doing one-to-many communication. You can't custom tailor something that's perfect to meet every single person's needs. It's a daunting challenge, and there are some people who value other things more. That's also part of this. Is there's a value to the time that people have, and there are people who do not want to feel fear. There are even people who get so afraid that they act to control the fear rather than to control the situation. And there's a real delicate balance that we play with here with the public. And you document, you can document then people who make these kinds of statements, and there's all kinds of causes for them. I just listed several different kinds of things that could be going on with any of those given individuals. But the good news is that most people aren't like that. And that is really the good news for our occupation, is that most people are listening for you and really do want to take steps actively to do something for themselves. And, interestingly, you're talking about the Southeast and its unique vulnerabilities. Even people who do take protective action, if you live in vulnerable housing, if the best thing you can do with 10 minutes of time is to get into your interior room of a poorly built house, the issue there isn't so much anything that anybody did. It's that we have to resolve the issue of poverty, to really help those people. So they're deep-seated, social social economic issues at play too. So yeah, my head was spinning because all of what you're saying are certainly things people say, and there's layered reasons why you hear that. There's only so much that some people can do, and there are some people that aren't sufficiently motivated, and there's some people who are too afraid, and it's a really interesting challenge to work with in my area to try to help make this better.
One thing, Kim, that I think is interesting, and I heard another meteorologist in a talk one day say this, and this is the politically incorrect way of saying it, but the bottom line is you can't save everyone necessarily in these situations. And what I've always been, and Kim and I've had a chance to work together in some of the workshops in Norman, but Kim, I just, this would be a show that go into 4 o'clock tomorrow morning if we start talking about demographics and all that. Higher educated people versus lower educated, higher income versus lower income. Even John, we get into those areas over in North Mississippi and particularly in eastern part of Little Rock's area over toward Memphis. We talk about Dixie Alley and why the fatalities are so high over there. And Kim, I got to assume that some of these demographics come into play in that area of Dixie Alley. Dixie Alley is not what we traditionally know as Tornado Alley.
Yeah, but that is where the fatality rates are the highest. And it's really consequential. I mean, you were just talking about chasing down there. All of those factors have been found to be part of the picture for why fatalities are higher. It's harder to see the tornadoes. More of them occur at night. And, predictably, that will influence the fatality counts that occur. It's influenced the creation of an entire research program called Vortex Southeast, where there are scientists that are trying to storm chase out there intentionally to do what it is that you did 20 years ago, and they're trying to do it to understand the particular kinds of atmospheric dynamics that are at play in southeast events. And unfortunately, I just learned this past week that with the government shutdown, there was one of the best possible outbreaks they could have tried to chase back in January. It was, January 18th, 19th. Out down there in Alabama and Mississippi. And they couldn't chase it because everything was shut down. So there was no administration for the program. Anyway, just a side note on that. But yeah, there are people who are very interested in studying this region and trying to do better for this particular area and for that population. It's very important to do.
Yeah, I used to call that Tornado Fatality Alley.
Wow.
Wow.
But
that's apt.
Let me tell you a story on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is much more uplifting, fortunately. Obviously, as warning coordination meteorologist, I did a lot of the spotter training. In fact, I did most of it in the Little Rock County warning area. And sometimes the turnout was very good and sometimes not so good. But anyway, one particular evening, I had started my program and I got to the break time, and a fella came up to me during the break and he said, my wife was killed in the tornado outbreak in 2008. That was Super Tuesday outbreak. And the moment that he mentioned what area he was from, I knew the circumstances. I remembered going to the place. It was a mobile home. And the news articles had mentioned that when they had their mobile home situated, she specifically wanted it placed in a valley because typically the tornadoes in that area tended to hit the mountaintops and not get down into the valley. Well, okay, that was often true with the weaker tornadoes, but once you got up to EF2, they didn't really care what the terrain was. And unfortunately, this tornado was a 3 or a 4 and went down into the valley and hit this mobile home. Now, one of the things that I had talked about earlier in spotter training was that, if you went back, 15 or 20 years ago, how many sources of weather information did most people have? Well, if you went and asked, most people, if they were paying attention to the weather, were sitting there watching the local TV station. What about now? Well, my gosh, they might be on Netflix, they might be on satellite TV, they might be on cable where they're on a premium channel, and they're not going to see those warnings. And I had mentioned this in my class. And this fella said, what you mentioned about that was so very true. He said, when that tornado hit our mobile home, we did not know it was coming. The kids were watching cartoons on satellite TV. And of course, they didn't see the warning. And I said, boy, you know, I really appreciate you telling me about this. And I said, but I imagine it's awfully tough to sit out there and hear me talk about some of these things when you've experienced something like this. I said, it must be really, really tough to take. I said, you know, if I were in your position, I don't know if I would come to a class like this. And the man said, I still have my 2 boys. I have to take care of them. And boy, that really sinks in.
Man, that's wonderful. Yep, I bet that made you feel all of the feels right there. That's bravery on his part to show up for sure. Very glad he did.
So John Robinson, you taught a lot of spotter training, but I thought one of the most interesting spotter trainings you taught related to the prison guards who actually worked with the prisoners in the field.
That's right. I did spotter training for both the State Law Enforcement Academy. In fact, I was a certified law enforcement instructor so that they could get education credits for attending my classes. And I also taught for the state prison system. And people would hear that and say, well, how are the prisoners going to call in the reports? What are you talking about? Well, it was the prison administrators and what are called the riders in Arkansas. These are these guards up on horseback that have to guard the prisoners when they're working out in the farm field, because Arkansas's prison system will tell you they're very proud of the fact that they grow an awful lot of the food that the prisoners eat. And so those prisoners have to go out and work in the fields. And so these riders would be in the class so that they would know some of the signs of approaching severe weather if they hadn't been notified otherwise, say, over the radio. So as a matter of fact, because of my training, I think I have been inside every single prison in our county warning area. In fact, in one particular severe weather outbreak, a tornado actually got onto the prison grounds, got very, very close to the maximum security prison. I won't go into exactly how the prison was built, but I was confident that if it had been struck, there would have been a safety margin there. But the tornado did destroy a lot of the prison housing. And in fact, at that particular prison, one of the administrators had videotape of the tornado, and lead forecaster was with me. And they said, hey, do you want to see the video? Well, heck yes, of course we want to see that video. So, you know, we had to go through the gate, and they told us, you know, before you do this gate, you have to acknowledge to me that you understand that by stepping through here, you could be killed or held hostage at some point. And it was, okay, yeah, let's go. And they gave us a tour of the prison, and we actually got to see death row. That's how far back in the prison we were. When I went to the super maximum security prison, they had one empty cell that day, and they let me try it out. And boy, I guarantee you, some of the people I work with were pretty disappointed they let me out of it. But when our regional director heard about this, because I had to drive him around a couple of times to various ceremonies, we would pass through this area, and I would tell him, you know, going into the prison, he said, I had no idea we had employees doing this type of work. But, you know, that was part of my job. And so, you know, I got used to the fact that one time when I gave spotter training, they sent an inmate out to carry my equipment in, and he happened to say a few things that made me think that he'd probably been in there for a while. And I said, what are you in for? He said, murder. And he's carrying my stuff around for me. Okay, right. But, you know, that was part of the job. And so obviously I survived. And we were very used to, when we went out and looked at damage, to be around inmates who were out there cleaning up, and the guards were there on horseback and so forth. And so, you know, that was just part of it.
Yeah, it's funny. My boss now at the Severe Storms Lab was the MIC of the Jackson, Mississippi office for a long time, Ellen Gerard. He was just today talking about a tornado that happened in Mississippi and hit a prison, and he commented that the construction of the quality of the construction, it held up really well. The walls did really well, even though it was a strong tornado, but unfortunately, there was an oil tanker or something that had come in through the roof, and they had the tornadoes find the weakest point of failure and will throw the most flammable object at it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it sounded like that was quite a kerfuffle, but generally made it out okay.
So Michael Armstrong, let's fast forward in that same year. That must have been a terrible year, but May 3rd, 1999, you and Dr. Scala have some memories of that day. But take us back to that day for you in Oklahoma City. It had to be terrifying.
Wow. When I think back to that, it's 20 years going on now that I really kind of started my career. And to start off there with that January outbreak and then turn around on May 3rd, 1999. Well, for me, we had actually, Dan Scoff and I, we were chasing that morning. We were actually now employed for KWTV. So we were official storm trackers and had gear this time, and we were prepared now. We were high tech. So we did have a laptop at that point that we could actually send pictures back from the field. It wasn't live moving pictures like it is now, but we could send a picture file, and it was pretty good for that time. So that day we had taken a final, and we stepped out of that final and into the engineering building on the campus of University of Oklahoma, which it used to be in the Sarkees Energy Center. So the engineering building was right next to it. So this is long before the National Weather Center was even built. And see, I'm dating myself a little bit here. All right. So anyway, we're in the engineering building and we're looking through all the data. And I remember distinctly, and I turned to Dan and I said, Dan, this 500 millibar map looks a lot like April 26, 91. I mean, it just looks strikingly familiar with where the upper low is up over Wyoming, Montana area. The synoptic flow is very interesting, how far the 500 millibar low was actually from Oklahoma, but yet you had a strong enough jet that we thought that it really looked very, very concerning. So at that point, it was a moderate risk. They had not gone high yet, but Rogash, who was the forecaster at the Storm Prediction Center, had mentioned strong tornadoes, and we agreed with that, as meteorology students and chasers. Oh yeah, every event was going to be that way, right? But we had no idea what we were about to get ourselves into. I mean, no idea. And we ended up seeing somewhere around the neighborhood of 20 tornadoes. We kind of lost track, and we got cut off from damage around Chickasha as the F5 developed near Amber and moved up into Moore. So we actually, we didn't see that move into Oklahoma City. Instead, we went back and caught the next supercell, which produced probably 20 tornadoes on its own, which was supercell B that day. It went up and ended up producing the Mulhall tornado, which is a huge tornado after dark on that event. So just to have nearly 60 tornadoes in your broadcast area, John, I know you know what that's like from the January 21st outbreak. And then to have populated area over and over and over again get hit, it was just it's hard to describe. It really is, because you sit here and you go, man, I am giving my life for this. I do want people to be prepared, and that feeling of like, yeah, not everybody is going to get the warning, or not everybody is going to take the right action once they get the warning. So, but you know what? A lot of people will. And probably just several years later, I told this story recently, and I'll make it quick, but I was at a school in El Reno, and I was doing a safety weather presentation like we do for the kids all the time. And one of the teachers said, I've got a teacher I want to introduce you to. And I said, oh, okay. So, I go and meet this teacher, and she recognized my voice as I introduced myself. And she said, yeah, I know who you are. She said, I live 3 miles north of El Reno off Highway 81. And I heard your voice that night, because what happened was we had tracked multiple storms, and we were on the last supercell of the day that formed down in Caddo County. It came up toward El Reno and crossed I-40, and it had a tornado with it. we couldn't see it because it was at night. And the rain corps, we were looking at the rain corps, and Dan actually got pretty upset. We both did. And we were like, that's it. We're done. We can't see anymore. And so we started driving back on I-40, and a tornado crossed the road right in front of us and was lit by the Walmart Supercenter parking lot lights on the west side of El Reno. And we watched it go into town. And I mean, I can't get the number dialed fast enough. Of course, cell communications were crazy because the networks were jammed up, but at least by that time in the night, it was freed up a little bit to where we could get some communication again, even with the TV station. So there were times where we couldn't even call in and get the warning to people because the cell networks were so jammed, even at that time. So, but this woman said that, I heard your voice and I heard your report, and we were able to get down to our basement, and our home was, they had a 2-story home, I believe, 2 or 3-story, and it was pretty much gone. And so to have that happen just reminds you of why you do what you do. Yeah, you can't save everybody, but boy, there are sure a lot of people who do pay attention to what we say.
So talk real briefly. I know James is going to want to run the recorded segments here in just a second, Michael, but talk for a brief moment about working with Gary.
Working with Gary was just it was a dream, because I grew up watching him. I mean, beep, 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 you hear it come on the TV, and here goes the warning. And I was like the warning guy for my family. I was just a kid, but I was glued to the TV, and I'd be calling them on the CB radio. I mean, I still remember our handles that we had on the CB radio. See, I told you I'm not as young as what you think I am. So that's how, and I would keep them, anytime Garfield County or whatever. I learned anything west or southwest of Ponca City, where I grew up in Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma, anything that formed to our west or southwest, you got to watch out for, So to get to walk in and hand him that video after the January 21st, 99 outbreak, and him invite me to be a part of the storm team, man, I just can't even tell you what that did for me, for just as a kid, I mean, I'm an adult at that point, but I've got, I'm a fan. I'm like, that's Gary England, and here I am talking to him, and then I talked to him earlier today on the phone at lunchtime. I mean, we have a friendship that has lasted well after our time working together has ended, and I just love him. And I think so much of he and his wife and his daughter Molly and his grandkids, and they're at OU now. And anyway, I just think the world of Gary, and really, really enjoy my time working with him.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, fellas, let's take a quick break here. And by the way, John, I got one question for you. What's it like being on the dark side doing television? I love asking that question of a Weather Service employee that's made the move over.
Well, of course, as WCM, I had to do a lot of interviews and things like that. And ever since I was a kid, I've been interested in behind-the-scenes stuff at TV stations. So, I knew some about the operations and so forth. But my first day on, which was back in April, I had not been in that studio for 20 years. And, they showed me this big monitor that's a touch screen and how to call things up. And it's like an hour later, we're on the air. So that was really a trial by fire. And I'm happy to say that the TV station got some very favorable comments of having me on there. And I didn't say any cuss words or anything, so I was happy about that. And so, yeah, it's different. But I still get to do some of my WCM points and some of my safety rules and calls to action. And one reason I'm on there is simply because of my knowledge of Arkansas and all the little highways and towns and things like that. And so I'm happy that I can contribute.
Yeah, well, I know they're very happy with you, and that's fantastic, Johnson. Thanks for your service on the TV side. But we have to take a very quick break for Tony Rice and the Astronomy Report. We'll come back with our picks of the week, the weather roundup, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
Groundhog Day has come and gone as all the animal astrologers, including a couple of unusual cousins, were rustled out of their artificial burrows and presented to the crowds. In Pennsylvania, Puxatawny Phil didn't see his shadow, while here in Raleigh, Sir Walter Wally did. The National Weather Service puts Puxatawny Phil's accuracy at about 40% over the last 10 years. The North Carolina Climate Office puts Wally's at a dead even 50-50 during that same period. But what does accurate even mean here? Well, we're usually talking about temperature, specifically deviation from the average. WREL's chief meteorologist Greg Fischel tried snowfall as a metric a couple of years ago, specifically predicting deviation from average snowfall over those final 6 weeks of winter. Raleigh's Monarchs meteorologist was correct a dismal 29% of the time. Now, those guys in the top hats in Puxatawny, they insist that Phil is 100% accurate, and that all the fault lies in their interpretation of what their whistlepig weathercaster whispers to them. Elsewhere across the country, another about 24 rodents revealed their opinions on Saturday. About half saw their shadow, and about half didn't. This includes a few Louisiana nutria, which I'm told are essentially big swamp rats, a pygmy hedgehog in Portland, Oregon, which is pretty cute, and a stuffed groundhog in DC that isn't. With all of these 50-50 predictions and 50-50 results, I propose we rename Groundhog Day to Coin Flip Day. There's one spring prediction that I can make with 100% certainty. The vernal equinox of 2019 will arrive in the Northern Hemisphere on Wednesday, March 20th at 5:58 p.m. Eastern. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Doing the show on the 4th of February, 2019. Time for a quick weather roundup. Troy's already been boasting of his warmth down in South Texas today. What did you say you had some 80s down there today?
Well, I know we had 77, James, at Camp Mabry and Austin Bergstrom International. For both those are first order climate stations. So we're really kind of proud of that. My pick of the week is and I'm assuming you're asking for that. I wanted to kind of go the other.
No. We're doing the weather roundup here. Don't jump ahead here.
I'm going to go the extreme in a second, though.
Okay, all right. No, we got to tease him, man. We got to tease him for the picks of the week. That's the segment we're going to do at the end here. We promised to get you out of time on 10 o'clock. Kevin, how'd you do in Wichita Falls with the warmth today?
We did 76 today, and I was just checking Graham, Texas on the hourlies, which is about less than 2 hours south of me, was at 79, so they might have done 80 today. And we expect 2 more days of 70s before the big cold front hits on Thursday. Yeah,
right.
The blue northers. So, Kim, I guess you're in the mild air right now, at least. Are you not?
So did you say Kim?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. We're in the mild air. We've been in and out of sort of the nose of the cold air today. But generally, yeah, can't complain with 42 currently in Norman, and it got up to the mid 50s and has been fluctuating just sort of around there through the day. But we'll be back up to a beautiful weekend in the 70s. Definitely looking forward to that. We've had a really good stretch of warm, wonderful weekends here. So we're in for another one. Gonna be good.
Awesome. John, how you doing on the warmth out there?
We made it, James. 55 today. Really amazing moderation. Here at my house, it was 1 above on Saturday morning and minus 2.7 on Thursday morning. So the turnaround is absolutely.
They'll be wearing shorts at Penn State this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just remarkable turnaround. And down here in the Deep South, we did 60s today. We'll see 70s the next few days before we see the cold air on Friday. But all right, so let's do it, Troy. All right, now is your cue. Picks of the week.
I want to give a plug because I don't know if you've been watching this today, but it's interesting. Up in Dr. Cliff Mass territory, up in Northwest Washington, Ken Nafsey is a friend of mine. He used to work in emergency management here in Austin, and he's up in Seattle now. And I'm looking at the Seattle OB right now. This is at SeaTac Airport right now. They're partly cloudy. It's 27, dew point in the upper teens, and their snow group, they've got 3 inches of snow on the ground at SeaTac right now. That hit earlier last night and this morning. And I'm told from Ken out in Seattle that the city did pretty well. The outlying areas got hit hard by this, but 3 inches on the ground in Seattle with a temperature of 27 and dew point in the upper teens. That's my pick of the week. I got to tell you, that's kind of a strange one for Seattle.
Ooh, goodness gracious. All right. Well, and again, for John Robinson and Michael, we'll come to you last for picks of the week here. This is where we share something weather related, websites, data, anything like that. So let's go over to Dr. John. Dr. John, what's your pick of the week?
Okay, James. So looking ahead to this mild weather, we still have a frozen ground. Some areas have got some snow cover, and now we're looking at a stalled frontal boundary. So the issue now turns to flooding. So my pick of the week is the Meteorological Model Ensemble River Forecast site, and I picked it for Indianapolis and down towards Louisville and Evansville, where there is a risk here for flooding as we move into Thursday.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And all these links will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. All right, Kev, what you got for us?
I have breaking news.
Oh, all right.
Whoa. Well, here we go.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
All right, I felt like I had to get out in front of this just in case. But on Twitter, @KevinSelly exists again for two reasons. Number one, there's nothing there. But number one, I felt like it was important to keep the name because it's my name and I wanted to do that. And there has been an odd awakening here at this television station on social media all of a sudden. So I went back in, but I wanted to get out in front of it because if people start asking or say, what's Kevin doing? Or is this really Kevin? Yes, it's me, but there's nothing there. So @KevinSelly returns to Twitter. But my pick of the week is, it was so cold up across much of the northern half of the country. One of the sidebar stories was about the frost quakes. So I have an article from Popular Science called "What the Heck is a Frost Quake?"
Awesome. So I wish I had time, and I'm the lead story tonight. I've got to leave here in a second, but so you deleted your Twitter account, but you got to reclaim your name, I guess.
Yeah, I did. I made a new account with my name. The funniest part about it was just to confirm that I was there. I went back on another computer or something, and I punched it in, and it said this account is temporarily blocked for suspicious activity.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Seen that one coming, Kevin.
Yeah, I guess so.
So does this mean you're coming back on the face bag too?
As I kind of said, there's this weird awakening here 10 years after the fact of social media, and so there may be some requirements finally at the television station. So I really don't know the answer to that.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Bill, I got to let you take it because I've got to change clothes here. But my pick of the week, it's the Spann reads mean tweets video. If you haven't seen it, all right, Bill, go.
Yeah, well, at least you don't have to change your shoes, James. So anyway, real quick, my pick of the week is the Tropical Weather Conference. It's coming up in early April, April 3rd through the 6th, South Padre Island. We're going to have Tim Smith and Alex Garcia, who are putting on that event on the 25th. And they've got an incredible lineup there at South Padre. Ken Graham, of course. They've got like 4 former and current National Hurricane Center directors. Of course, Dr. Neil Frank, Max Mayfield, Bill Reed. They'll have Phil Klotzbach, of course, our friend Leslie, who joined us tonight. Mark Sudduth, who's had a health scare this year, will be there. And lots of other folks. So it's going to be an amazing time. And I'm really excited that I'm going to get to go to that. So they're going to be on the 25th. And we're going to do a show live from there that Wednesday night with 4 National Hurricane Center directors. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So any of you that can come and join me and help bring Brian's microphone thing, that would be extremely helpful. So that's my pick of the week. And who have we left out here, Kevin? Anybody? Did we get Kim's pick of the week?
Kim did not go.
Not yet. Yeah. And first, before I do the pick, I want to say, lest anyone worry that Kim is broken with my horrible forecast for the weekend, I'm not, in fact, broken. I was actually thinking that today was Friday. This is how bad my mom brain is right now. And I'd forecasted earlier and saw the next couple days are going to be beautiful. This weekend looks really cold, but it's going to be beautiful the next couple days, possibly stormy. Forgive me.
It's going to be okay, Kim.
It's going to be okay one day. One day I'm going to sleep again, and it's going to be great.
Kim, it's only 18 years till she leaves for college.
Yeah.
This show is going to become like the slow degeneration of Kim's neurotransmitters. So, all right, my pick of the week is NOAA, their website explaining the polar vortex. Actually, no. And here's another Kim. No, I chose the NOVA page instead of the NOAA page, the NOVA page, where they were talking about, it was one of the best explainers I'd seen, talking about what is and is not the polar vortex, and actually even invoking the stratospheric polar vortex. But what I really loved about it is that it mentioned what I think we should all get back to discussing and talking about when these events occur, and that's the jet stream. Whatever happened to that? I mean, really, all this is the jet stream. That when I was growing up, everyone talked about this on the weather. I'd love my broadcast friends to comment. Whatever happened to this? Why can't we just talk about it being the jet dipping down further south? It's a very common occurrence. It's always happened. It makes this whole polar vortex thing makes people feel like something new and dangerous is occurring, and it can be dangerous, but it's not new.
It's 50 years old.
Yeah, you know, you've hit it right on the head, though.
Probably next to that.
My theory on this is it's two-part. You hit it right on one, is that it's new. There has to be something different because we're 24-hour news cycle now, 24, 365, 7 days a week. And so there always has to be something new. The other thing I think is interesting about weather stories is that there are times when we just need a break, especially these days when there's so much nonsense and political ads and coverage just pounding on you, and we need a break for something else. And so a lot of times it's easy to reach out and grasp a weather thing, even though this was a big cold outbreak. But I think you hit it right on the head.
Awesome. Well, that's my pick.
Thank you, Kim, and we'll get you back in practice here. We'll get some 2 a days, Kim, and you'll be good to go before long.
I'll know what day it is. It's gonna be great.
Certainly glad to have you back. So thank you so much for being here. So that's really cool. All right, so we got Troy. Troy, I know you're turning into a pumpkin shortly. Michael, we'll come to you. Pick of the week.
Okay, so my pick of the week is actually something that comes from a friend of mine, and I'm really passionate about tornadoes and tornado forecasting. So let me go into screen share here for just a minute. And let me ask you, can you guys see that photograph right there?
Yes.
Okay. This is something I'm really passionate about. So a good friend of mine who I graduated from OU with, named John Esterheld, and his also the co-author of this particular paper, Donald Giuliano, looked at what is called the critical angle, which is actually found in soundings down, forecast soundings, and actually the Storm Prediction Center, and you look at their soundings as well. So what is the critical angle? It's the angle between the straight line portion of the shear vector that's in the lowest. It can be 500 meters. It may only be 300 meters, but it's before you start getting directional change above the surface. So basically, in some ways, I think it marks the boundary layer really well. So it's that angle between that shear vector and also the direction of the storm is moving. So there's your storm relative inflow vector. So it's that angle. And the closer that is to 90 degrees, this is the theory behind it. And in John's paper, John and Don's paper, which you can find, it's in the electronic journal of, it's ejssm.org. And what I will do is, if any of you want to tweet at me or anything else, or I'll just tweet out the link to the paper. But anyway, it's e-journal of severe storms meteorology. This thing goes back to 2008, but I just think so much of the work, I think it's really incredible in terms of discriminating between tornadic versus non-tornadic supercells, particularly violent tornadoes. So it's been really, really interesting to watch photographs, and it's one of those things I think maybe is underused somewhat. And as we get into the model world, one of the problems with it is that it struggles because we don't really have a model that can truly let's see. I'm trying to think about what I want to say. We can't really resolve it, is what I'm trying to say. And as a result, what is happening is that we just lose the ability to be able to really get that lowest level of shear, which has so much to do with whether we get tornadoes or not. And so as we get maybe the HRRR or some other model down the road that can actually really forecast the boundary layer much better, I think we'll maybe even get better at anticipating whether we're going to have tornado outbreaks or not, because we still have events that we think there's going to be tornadoes, and we don't sometimes. So anyway, that's my pick.
Well, that's an outstanding pick of the week. Dr. Scala, I think that Michael probably gave us the best pick we've had in a while there. What do you say?
Yeah, Bill, I like it very much. Storm motion vector is something that if we don't get right, we don't get that hodograph right.
That's exactly right. Well, John Robinson, it's been a thrill having you on. Can you stay for a few more minutes? Because I have a little WeatherBrains extra tonight I want to ask you about. Could you stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes after you give your pick? Good. So hit us with your pick of the week.
Well, another big anniversary for Little Rock, unfortunately, that's coming up here very soon is the 20th anniversary of the American Airlines flight.
That's what I want to talk about.
In Little Rock. And I got to participate in the NTSB investigation on that. And the Weather Channel right now has a series called Mayday Air Disasters, I think. And one of their episodes is a 1-hour episode about this aircraft accident. So if anybody would like to go back and look at that NTSB report, it's really fascinating, everything that they look into. And there are a lot of radar pictures in there of what happened that night with the flight path overlaid onto that radar. So that NTSB report is on their website. And I recommend looking at it. It's very interesting, I think.
Outstanding. So, Dr. John, can you stick around for a little while, or do you need to go?
A few more minutes, Bill. Let's.
Okay, good. Kim, can you stick around?
Nobody has come in here screaming, which is amazing. I'm good.
All right, good. Well, just enjoy the respite there for a moment, Kim. Michael, can you stick around for a minute?
I would love to. This is a lot of fun for me. So yeah, I'm here.
Good. And Troy, you have to go, or you?
I have to go, but I really want to hear about John talking about this American Airlines thing, because I remember it quite well. So
I flew on that same flight so many times going to Hot Springs, and I was sitting in the Hampton Inn in Hot Springs when that plane crashed.
Really?
And had flown in on that flight a couple of nights before, so it hit home extremely hard for me. That's an amazing story, that situation. You know, it's been since 1994 that we had our last true wind shear air crash in the United States, is what I think I know to be the fact, the U.S. air crash in Charlotte in 1994. But there were a lot of weather factors at play, and you alluded to that. You were part of that NTSB group that investigated that crash, weren't you, John?
Yes, I was on their meteorology group. I was asked to take part in that and to represent the National Weather Service on that investigation. And I will say that I was quite surprised, because I thought in those big aviation disasters like that, somebody from Washington always dealt with it. And for some reason, they asked me. And so I was quite honored to be asked. I'm sorry that 11 lives were lost in that accident, of course. But to take part in that investigation and see what all goes on behind the scenes in one of those investigations, quite honestly, it was one of the highlights of my career.
John, Troy here, without giving everything away, that accident, while the meteorology was extremely important and what caused that, a lot of crew issues too, right? When it came down to it, about getting into Little Rock the last flight of the night, trying to get on the ground.
10 hours nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of it. And I think that was listed as one of the contributing factors in the Weather Channel program. Greg Feith, who was the lead investigator for that investigation, as a matter of fact, that appears on that program, mentioned the aviation term "get their itis." That it seemed like they wanted to land And of course, a study was done after that at DFW about it seemed like the closer the planes get into where they're going, the more likely they are to continue their descent. And of course, at DFW, to have to go around, there's quite a penalty there when you have to get back in line. Obviously, that didn't come into play at Little Rock at 10 minutes to midnight. But nevertheless, it seemed like the crew did want to get there, and there were a lot of factors, but the main thing that was mentioned was that they did not deploy the spoilers on the back of the wing when they landed. So as a result, the plane did not slow down. It went off the end of the runway at about 100 miles an hour. And quite honestly, that was new to me. I mean, when you fly, they land and you feel the brakes and you hear the engines reverse. And I certainly did not realize that those spoilers were the major braking effect out of all those three things that are used for braking. And so that was brand new to me, I'll tell you. And one of the other things really that struck me when you hear about one of these disasters, whether it's aviation or a railroad accident or a big highway accident, and the NTSB takes part, it seems like news about the event dribbles out day after day after day. And it's like, oh, yeah, they were holding back on that. No, they weren't. I probably found out in one of these investigations, a lot of times you know a couple of days ahead of time exactly what you're going to do. But there are only so many hours in the day and so much daylight. Yeah. And so it may take a couple of days before something is announced, but you knew almost right off the bat that was going to be looked into. It's just that, like anything else, there's priorities, and there's only so much time to do every item that you have to do.
Well,
one other thing that I would mention, I was not involved, of course, in any of the civil litigation because it's almost impossible to get government employees to testify in civil litigation if the government is not involved in the court case. And the National Weather Service was not involved in any litigation to do with this accident. But there was a court case where some of the findings were quite a bit different from what the NTSB investigation showed. And one reason for that, what most people don't realize is against federal law to use any NTSB investigation findings in civil litigation. So the thing about the spoilers, my understanding of it was the testimony was different in the civil court case. And
the captain died, so it was his estate that was testifying, right, John?
What's that?
The captain perished in the crash.
Yes.
So it was his estate that was trying to prove that he was that the spoilers had failed, right?
I think again, it's all I did was read about this after the fact. The main contentions in the civil lawsuit from the pilot's estate was that the metal light bridge that they ran into, or walkway, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the runway that split the plane apart, should have been frangible in FAA terminology. That means breakaway, like the highway signs along the interstate, and also that at the end of the runway, because it was perhaps a little shorter than it should have been, there should have been some of that mushy concrete stuff at the end of the runway, much like a runaway truck ramp, that would have caused the plane to just sink and stop all of a sudden.
What would have happened if they hadn't hit the tower? Would they have gone in the river?
Yes. There's no doubt in my mind that would have occurred. Again, the NTSB doesn't do speculations like that. But yes, that metal light bridge was there because some of the navigation aids actually extend out into the river, which tells you how close the end of that runway was to the river.
Right. Well,
and at that day, there was no water rescue equipment at the Little Rock Airport.
Huh.
They do have some, but it was at a station nearer to downtown. Now, true, in Little Rock, the airport is not that many miles from downtown, but I'm just saying at the airport itself, they did not have any water rescue equipment. The other thing that amazed me was when you go to the airport and you see the airport fire station, maybe you see it from the terminal. They have those huge chrome yellow or lime green fire trucks in there. The FAA specifies how many fire trucks they have to have. They specify how many how much training those firefighters have to have. They do not specify how many firefighters have to be on those trucks. And so that night there were 3 ARF trucks, as they're called, aircraft rescue firefighting, and 2 of those trucks only had 1 person on them, the driver.
Wow.
The 3rd truck only had 2 people on it.
Wow.
It tells you when there's a fire and there's rescue to be done at the same time, there are not a lot of people initially available to do that. Now, certainly when something happens at the airport, trucks from all over Little Rock are called to go to the airport and assist, not just the ARF trucks that take part in that. But the ones that initially arrive do not have very many people on them.
You know what I guess is amazing, Dr. John, the work done by Dr. Theodore Fujita and everything, and all the people through the years. I think what's amazing to me in 2019 is that I say this knocking on cheap wood here, that it appears that at least the aviation community understands this a little better now. When I was in my undergraduate years at Texas A&M, I did a paper on the Pan Am crash in Louisiana, which is a 727 taking off, Dr. John, the middle of a thunderstorm, if you remember it, when this thing took off and landed in the neighborhood. And then, of course, April 2nd, 1985, Delta Flight 191, Dallas Fort Worth. Yeah, but it's pretty amazing that, you know, this is one of the last ones, John and Dr. John, that we've had there at Little Rock, and I guess aviation deserves sort of a pat on the back for trying to better understand this.
There's been a lot of great research done by people flying purposely into storms. I've had the experience of flying on 5 different research aircraft into and around storms, just to look at things, how quickly the environment changes. And let me share a story with you. I was at the Weather Channel when this event occurred, and the Weather Channel knew about my experience flying into storms, and they asked me to go on the air and reconstruct with radar what I think happened with that aircraft. And knowing in the back of my mind that this was going to be in litigation, I declined to do that. And I said, let's talk about what the weather looked like, but in terms of a cause, we can't go there. That's not a good place to be.
Right.
It really makes you think when you're on that plane and you just want to get there. You know, when you like the pilots or whatever, sometimes you think just shoot the landing so we can get there. And that, that made me really rethink that.
I tell my students in class every semester, when a pilot tells you that I'm flying into DFW, and all of a sudden he says, I think we're going to circle for a while. There's a thunderstorm over the airport. When you get off that airplane, you kiss that pilot.
That's right.
Do that right then.
That's so true.
Yeah,
but you know that MIT study that you quoted or that you alluded to, John, Kim, they found that 65% of the pilots would fly that landing with a thunderstorm over the field.
Yes,
you know, they want to do that in a private aircraft, fine, but not in a commercial.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, John, what did you think there was any impact of the fact there wasn't a radar in the tower at Little Rock that night?
Well, you know, that was debated and that was brought up as part of it. There is no terminal Doppler weather radar at Little Rock. And even after that accident, one was not installed.
Okay.
The TDWRs are at hub airports or airports that have tremendous amount of commercial activity. And I hate to say it, but it almost looks like it's a cost benefit thing that Little Rock just doesn't have enough flights that the FAA thinks that one of those is warranted at Little Rock.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, John. You mentioned that because I was thinking back to Dr. Kelvin Drogemeyer, and sitting through class with him, and he talked about how with DFW and the flight that did come down with the microburst, that it took that actually, and obviously there was other things at play, and he mentioned that as well. But a lot of times it takes a tragedy to get something big done, and after that, the 88D money came through for the next rad session. I don't know that you could say that one event actually, because that's such a big project, but nonetheless, that's kind of the opposite of that, where Little Rock didn't get the TDWR.
As far as getting the 88Ds after the accident at DFW, I can tell you that a director of the Weather Service told me that the day after that accident, somebody from the Office of Management and Budget called him and said, "You've got the money for those radars."
Well, John, you started out the center weather units. Those came as a result of crash of Southern Flight 242 outside of Atlanta back in the late 70s. The center weather units, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, we had an F5 tornado in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I think the CWSUs do a great job initially. You know, it was kind of I don't know exactly how to explain it. It was, nobody knew exactly what we were going to do when we first got there. And we really did, I thought that we did not have enough equipment to do a good job of it. Now, of course, they have much better equipment now, so that's drastically changed. But I was frustrated when I first got to Miami and saw what we had to work with. Now, we did have an air traffic controller scope at our position, which was unusual. That you know, we could sit there and watch all the aircraft, and in fact, we put that to good use. If we saw a flight going near an area of known turbulence or near thunderstorms, we would, you know, center the cursor over that plane and get its ID and call that controller and say, get a pilot report from that pilot. You know, has he got any turbulence? And we would send those pilot reports out. And amazingly, I'm sure, you know, people looking at the reports that came out of Miami Center were wondering how in the world we were getting reports from communist aircraft, which we were.
Well, John, back in
they were flying to Cuba. And of course, they couldn't fly over the U.S., but they were in the airspace over the ocean. And you know, we could easily get reports from communist aircraft going to Cuba.
Well, the Southern 242 crash over outside of Atlanta, the FAA and the weather radar on board the aircraft, John, those were both black and white at that point, right? They were just black and white radar. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And in fact, that was, you know, I think that was part of the discussion that they had misinterpreted exactly what they were looking at on radar. They thought they were looking at a hole when they were actually looking at the most intense part of the storm on that black and white radar.
Well, the hail shaft, I think, caused rebound in the radar, and instead of showing it being there, I think it just basically showed an absence of it. And let's just go through that hole. That it didn't work well.
Yeah. But boy, those pilots sure did everything they could.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might have landed that plane on the highway.
Well, it's a DC-9 glider for the last few miles, you know, last little bit. So.
Yeah. If it hadn't hit that gas pump at that little country grocery store, the outcome might have been quite a bit different.
You're right.
It might have been a Sully Sullenberger story. Yep. Dr. John, did you get everything off your chest over there? I noticed you chimed in a second there ago, and we didn't go to you. Sorry about that.
No, we're good, Bill. I was just thinking as we've been talking about this, I was we've grown up in New Jersey when the 727 crashed on approach to JFK.
Yeah.
And that's what stimulated Fujita's work into wind shear. It was, if you've never read that paper that he wrote, that is one of the most astounding investigative reports I've ever read. It's fantastic.
A true weather prophet. No
that was an Eastern Airlines jet, wasn't it, John?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it landed on Rockaway Boulevard.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. So Troy Kimmel, will we ever have another wind shear passenger plane crash in the United States? You think?
I imagine we will, but I will tell you, knowing some pilots and people that fly on the right and left hand seats up there, what's interesting, and all of you know this, but you know, Delta and American and United, they've all got that case, and I'm pretty sure they have the Little Rock case in their simulators. And I've talked to pilots that have tried to deal with the Delta 191 crash at DFW in a simulator and said, well, I won't tell you what they said, but let me tell you, it's difficult. It would be difficult to impossible to deal with that. The decision should have been made a few miles back.
No question.
You
All
know,
right, Dean Robinson, add anything you want to add before we shut down here?
Well, that Delta crash at DFW, I was actually in Houston visiting my parents when that occurred, and because one of the Houston stations had a sister station in Dallas, a lot of that coverage was shown live in Houston. So I got to see a lot of that stuff as it occurred, and of course I'd always been interested in aviation type stuff to begin with. So when that NTSB report came out, that was one of the first things that I read. And in fact, I read almost all the NTSB reports that come out now, unless it's some shipping accident, which I know so little about that subject that I may kind of gloss over that. But the railroad and aviation and highway accidents, I read all of those things.
They're really
would be to be at the NTSB.
Well, it's amazing. And if you haven't read, Dr. John talked about the Eastern Airways crash up in the Northeast, but if you haven't read the Delta 191 NTSB report, John, it's a fascinating report to read as well.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and when we were looking into things after the 1420 crash in Little Rock, I was with a FAA airline inspector in a car out there on the field, and as we passed by the terminal building, I saw one of the airplanes sitting there at the gate, and I forget what airline it belonged to, but I noticed the tail number ended in EA. And of course, this was in 1999, and went out of business in early 80s, I think. Like that. I said, you mean to tell me that was an Eastern plane? He said, "Oh yeah, that was an Eastern plane, and they had never changed the tail number of it."
Yep.
Wow.
Hey guys, while we're talking about the aircraft real quick, I was just thinking about something that I don't know if I've shared with that many people. I hope you all have read it though, but Dr. Jeff Masters' recounting of flying into Hurricane Hugo. If you've never read that, it's an amazing read.
It is. It is.
You agree? Yeah. Dr. John agrees.
Oh yeah. I know Jeff very well.
Okay. I thought
I've actually talked about that.
John, you need to be working on that.
I'll try again, Bill, but he shut me down the last time I asked.
Oh, it's such an amazing story. I mean, it really is. It's so compelling to read.
It is.
He'll come on.
One thing that most people don't know is before 9/11, the Weather Service forecasters that did aviation forecasting, which is every forecast office, could sign up and take free flights on the airlines. And of course, you had to do some paperwork beforehand and afterhand, but you got to sit in the cockpit right behind the pilot. And I will say that I had never been on an aircraft before I flew to Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia, sitting in the cockpit. And that's an interesting first time for flying when you're sitting there right behind the pilot.
Yeah.
And I think it is much less stressful sitting in the cockpit than it is sitting back there in the cabin. Because sometimes when the plane is coming into the airport and they bank fairly sharply, and you hear people go, "Oh, like, oh my gosh, something must be wrong." And you're sitting in the cockpit, you know exactly what's about to happen. Yeah. And then I thought it was just fascinating. I took a flight to Honolulu from DFW. In fact, that was the first flight I took after working on the 1420 gauge. The first officer was brand new to that route and brand new to that type of aircraft. So the pilot, of course, was an instructor, and to get to hear him do all the instruction, it was a DC-10, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Well, now we do this, and we do this, and we do this. Because sometimes, even when you sit in the cockpit, all that stuff is so automatic to them. Flip, 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 and rattle off that checklist and so forth. To listen to him, say, now we do this and we do this and we do this. Honestly, I didn't get a word in edgewise until we were over in Arizona, which was fine because that is kind of the FAA likes a sterile cockpit, especially on takeoff and landing, where there's not a lot of unnecessary chatter going on. They want it all. That's kind of fine with me.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, anything you want to add before we adjourn?
Well, no, I've already been taking a peek at some of the 0Z data for Wednesday because we're going to have some moisture here in Oklahoma and Texas and to work with. It'll be interesting to kind of see how this. We have a front that actually slipped in here today, and we were, I think, somewhere highs were around mid 60s is what all the guidance was going for, and we ended up in the mid to upper 40s this afternoon with this low cloud deck. So we're going to have a front hanging around on Wednesday here in Oklahoma, and actually the significant tornado parameters actually come up quite a bit by 0Z Thursday. So Wednesday evening could be a little interesting around here.
Well, Michael, is SPC saying anything yet? I haven't looked here.
They have a marginal risk in. They haven't gone to slight yet, but I don't know. Maybe after they look at the 0Z suite tonight, they might introduce a slight. We'll see.
Okay. Well, this has been a fun show. Special thanks to Dustin Vargo for suggesting it. Special thanks to Scott Martin for pulling these great guests together. This is one of the more fun shows I've had in a while. What a great pairing of two great guests tonight. Thank you, John, for joining us.
And it was great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and come back anytime. You're full of stories.
Hey, John's got some really good stuff to share with you guys about how they're still working on the EF scale. He was telling me
we didn't hardly touch that.
Yeah, I know you got it.
Minutes and maybe be ready when Spann comes back.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not the spokesman for that thing, but I've been on it ever since the start, and I think I've only missed one meeting so far. So nothing is carved in stone yet. But I will say this: that because we're operating under the rules of the American Society of Civil Engineers, they require public comment period. So after everybody gets their drafts together, there will be one public comment period, and that we, as they say on The Price is Right, rush back and make changes on the race game. And then there's another public comment period. So everybody's, I'm afraid some people might come out of the woodwork and have some trolling comments, but that would happen. But that's part of it. And I think we're making some good improvements. I really do.
That's outstanding. Well, thank you for being with us tonight, John. So, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast that's all about weather. We do this on Monday nights. We're going to have some great guests coming up here in the next couple of weeks, especially next week. We're going to have a Women in Meteorology special start time next week. Breaking news, 6:45 p.m. Ginger Z will be joining us, Tina Stahl. Also, some other folks joining us that night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Cindy Palmer, who is the MIC at Monterey, will be joining us that night also. So that's going to be a very fun show. Looking forward to that. President of the AMS, Dr. Jenny Evans, will join us on the 18th. And as I said earlier, Tim and Alex will join us from the National Tropical Weather Conference. And then, of course, we get into National Weather Podcast Month in the month of March. We'll have a guest every week from one of the other podcasts and some special guests, ending with Dr. Chuck Doswell on Monday.
Right. Oh, that'll be lively.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Seems like that's the anniversary of the tri-state tornado, isn't it? March 25th, is that right? Or is it?
I think you are right.
Yeah, 1925,
maybe. Maybe I'm wrong there. But Chuck, of course, is an expert on that event, so that'll be that.
You're the weather historian. Come on, Bill.
No, I know I'm rusty though, Michael. I'm rusty, but I am also excited to announce quite tentatively that Neil Frank will actually join us not only for that National Tropical Weather Conference show, but right before the anniversary of Hurricane Camille, he and Bill Reed are going to join us and talk about Hurricane Camille.
Wow.
It's going to be one
amazing lineup
on your calendar for Monday, August the 12th. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But until we get together next week for talk about women's roles in meteorology and some of the difficulties and successes that they face, I'm Bill Murray for the whole group here at WeatherBrains. Hope you have a great week. And as I always say, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. All right. Great show, gentlemen. Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you later.
Yeah, they're done. And there's still 28 people, 27 people watching a blank screen. It's that magical time where we are going to simulcast Song of the Night on Instagram and WeatherBrains, where the two cultures collide. So that was a great show tonight. Looks like they just wrapped up. Looks like they finished at 10:26 here. It's 10:28. I just missed the end of it. So great having John on the show talking about the Arkansas event back in '99. But we got to sign this thing off. Thank you guys for watching on the WeatherBrains side. We'll see you all next Monday night.